Okay, I have 3 minutes after 1, so I think this would be a good time to go ahead and get started. I want to first of all thank all of you for joining us today, and just a few kind of housekeeping things as well as some announcements about upcoming programming that's happening with the State Approved Museum program. I am going to put, of course, in the chat information about our writing workshop, which is going to be on October 14th. If you are part of a state approved repository, that grant workshop will be free for you. But you do need to email me to let me know about receiving a discount code so that you can attend that portion of it free. The curation forum will be the entire day. The first half will be the workshop in the morning through up to about 12 or 12:30. And then in the afternoon, we're going to have other presentations. So I've heard from a lot of you, and there's still available tickets. So let me know if you would like to attend, and we may actually have room for more than just one person from your repository to attend as well. So, but I'll let everyone know that in the next week or so. And there's kind of a little flyer about that. So that's what's coming up, pretty exciting. It will be a virtual event and we encourage all of you to attend. If you can't attend the workshop part of it in the morning, certainly try to join us for parts of it in the afternoon. We'll have a more detailed agenda by October 1st. So with that, why don't we go ahead and start this confab, which is kind of our rescheduled confab from one that we had scheduled in August. And we did sort of talk a little bit about loan issues at the end of it, but we can certainly talk more about that. But before we do that, we're going to talk about History Colorado's community lending program. But officially, before we actually start this, I'm going to do our land acknowledgement, which is in the spirit of healing and education, we acknowledge the 48 contemporary tribes with historic ties to the state of Colorado. These tribes are our partners. We consult with them when we plan exhibits, collect, preserve, and interpret artifacts, do archaeological work, and create educational programs. We acknowledge these indigenous peoples as the original inhabitants of this land. And with that, I would like to introduce our presenter and my colleague at History Colorado, Kimberly Kronwall, who is the registrar. Let me get your title right. It's the Exhibits and Loan Registrar. And I think you probably all saw her bio that was sent out as well. But Kimberly, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself more and start the presentation, that would be great. Thank you so much. Oops, we can't hear you, Kimberly.
Oops, I have my headphones in. How about now? Can you hear me now? Okay, okay, great. All right, thank you everyone. Yes, as Todd said, my name is Kimberly Kronwall and I am the Exhibits and Loan Registrar here at History Colorado. Thank you everyone also for being willing to attend again. Due to some miscommunication on our calendar, I just totally missed the last one. So I do have a discount code for you at the end if you're interested in borrowing one of the community lending resources. I am just going to go ahead and present oh, Todd, the host has disabled participant screen sharing. If you could please allow me to present my screen, that'd be fantastic.
I will do that, yes.
Thank you. So for all of you, I am going to just basically be presenting the Lunch and Learn that I held for History Colorado staff back in June, I believe it was. And so you'll be getting, you'll see some stuff that's related to, it'll say like Lunch and Learn, but I wanted to go ahead and just recycle this for you because it's also a really great opportunity to talk about what History Colorado is doing to get museum loans to non-traditional sites. So with that, I will go ahead and share. And let me go ahead and get that ready. Okay. So let's see if we can get to the next slide. Oh, we already did the land acknowledgement. Thank you so much, Todd, for doing that. I did that as well for my colleagues at the Lunch and Learn. So to get started, the community lending resource really started as something that I wanted to be able to provide to communities that don't necessarily understand or have experience with museum loans. And out of that came what we like to call a curated Colorado story. Each curated Colorado story topic connects to the stories in our collection based on a movement, people, place, subject, area, or historic event in Colorado. As you can see, this is one of the flyers for the 10th Mountain Division Curated Colorado Story. The idea is that every Curated Colorado Story will come with its own set topic, with artifacts, with reproduction images, with label copy, and with all the supplies that you will need to put on your very own Curated Colorado Story. It's essentially like a traveling exhibition, but we wanted to avoid the idea of traveling exhibition because we really are only gearing this toward Colorado audiences and Colorado borrowers, as well as that these are quite small. They're not like the big poster shows that you might have heard of or the big traveling created shows. These really are sort of smaller stories, smaller topics, pretty broad. They don't go into anything super specific, but in terms of like it's this person's story, we do. I work with my colleagues across History Colorado to make sure that we're incorporating just a really wide range of stories and features. So like I said, each Curated Colorado Story connects to smaller museums, historic sites, libraries, community centers, community museums, community colleges, town halls could be another example. We just sent out a Curated Colorado Story about the Santa Fe Trail to a visitor center in Trinidad. So the tourism board borrowed one of the lending resources from us. And these are ready to display loans of 5 to 10 objects, some with reproduction photos, some with real like photographs from our collection as well, and includes interpretive labels. And something that we wanted to really capitalize on were the programming ideas. So every curated story comes with 3 programming ideas, and that includes things like books to discuss at a book club, or perhaps a movie night, or even trivia. We sort of create little ideas for the borrowing site to be able to recreate something for their audiences, for their community, but that can relate back to perhaps something in their own community, but also help them engage a little bit more with the object. Our target audience, this was something that came to me. I had been sort of thinking about, I work with a lot of like bigger name institutions throughout Colorado, our neighbors here in Denver, but also sites throughout Colorado. And I really wanted to target our rural partners. So that's mountain towns, that's the Eastern Plains, that's Southwest Colorado. I really wanted to be able to focus on getting real, authentic museum experiences and objects to venues that don't traditionally get loans because they don't have state-of-the-art, they don't have guards, or they don't have state-of-the-art HVAC system. They don't have perhaps what we would consider traditional museum environments. And this allowed us to sort of really think through what is our loan process. We have our standard outgoing loan policy, which outlines everything that you are responsible for as the borrower. But really for a lot of these audiences, they've never really completed a general facility report. They've never completed, that's their certificate of insurance is through their county. So, I wanted to really work with them to create a simplified application process that would allow for smaller institutions to work with History Colorado, that there are some minimum security requirements. Basically, you got to have some doors that lock. You got to have a case that locks. You need someone on site during open business hours, and you need to be able to receive things and be able to put them in a closet and let them climatize for about 24 hours. So I deconstructed what the standard outgoing loan process is, and then I took it into its essential parts and made that part of the application process, which are all through Google Forms. So the first form you complete is an interest form, and that just helps me understand who's requesting the loan, which curated Colorado stories you'd be interested in borrowing, as well as helps me understand perhaps the timing, because a lot of these sites are maybe only seasonally open. So I would want to make sure that, this particular curated story is available for you to borrow and for how long, that kind of thing. My hope would be that these people would, even though they have no little to object handling or packing experience, would feel equipped in the process to be able to borrow the loans, because I provide them with all of those details in that application process and make it clear what they are responsible for. You can have modest cases with locks, think a jewelry counter case or a trophy case. We're not talking, big fancy plexi bonnets. But of course, if you have that, then great, more power to you. The thing that really got me prompted with this idea of connecting with rural partners was that I went to a conference in the fall of 2019, and I heard a librarian actually who was based outside of Taos, New Mexico, who was working through the library system to get oral histories and digitization projects out to the community. So she would send out through the library borrowing system kits for people to borrow to collect oral histories, to scan their own photos, and then send those items back to the library. And then we're able to upload all of that online and make it so that these little small community towns outside of Taos would be able to have not only a stake in their local history, but also be able to provide history for the rest of the state as well. And places that maybe were more remote to get to, harder to get to. So I was really inspired by her work. And I had been toying with the idea of figuring out what would be a successful community lending resource. And these curated Colorado stories really help rural partners feel a connections with our state history. Again, they're pretty broad topics, but they do help people see, in what ways their community might have been connected with the state history. The big outcome that I would like to see is that these rural partners feel like they have an ally and a network in History Colorado. That History Colorado isn't just for History Colorado and History Colorado's collection, but that it's for everyone who is interested in knowing more about our state history, more about connecting with the networks that we have. Todd, working with the state repositories, that's a huge network. And to be able to connect with you and the communities that you would know to be able to borrow these objects would really be just such a wonderful thing to help smaller sites feel like they not only are supported by History Colorado, but perhaps people in their nearby community as well, or people that they haven't met before. One of the desired outcomes, of course, is that rural partners successfully complete the loan process so that they include the FedEx return shipment and the closeout survey. So I do include a survey at the end of the lending period where I ask them about how was their experience. I want to know, were the instructions that I provided good enough? I want to know if they used any of our programming and how many people attended. I wanted to know if there's anything I could do to help them feel better equipped, or if there's something that I missed, I would want to be able to provide that as well. I really want this to be not only an iterative process for myself, but for my colleagues as well, to think through what are topics that people are interested in what ways can we constantly be improving our curated stories so that lenders like yourself or lenders, throughout the state of Colorado feel like they have a voice as well in what they in these curated Colorado stories. And of course, returning the objects to me would be even better. So to me, a successful outcome is they did give us our objects back for the next set of people. So that was really important. One of the things that the borrowers are responsible for is that they must be able to fit everything within lockable cases. So even though you have modest cases, it does need to be able to be locked, and you do need to be able to send and receive FedEx shipments. I provide prepaid return labels that people then contact me when they're ready for the objects to be sent back to History Colorado, so I can schedule the pickup. We have a really generous discount through FedEx, and so that's something that I provide through History Colorado that maybe they wouldn't be able to provide, because some of these totes that the objects are shipped in can weigh up to 20, 30 pounds, and so it is important that I provide something that History Colorado takes advantage of the discounts we can provide and send on to our borrowers. We do have a nominal fee of about $100 that will be increasing. I have to run the numbers a little bit, but that will be increasing to maybe $125. The FedEx prepaid labels are a little bit more expensive than I had anticipated, even with our steep discount, but it will still be a nominal fee, no more than $150. But for now, it is still $100, and that just covers staff time and supplies. It does not cover, and the fee for the FedEx prepaid shipping level. It doesn't cover any of the extra things that we provide in terms of staff time and supplies that might be above and beyond that we just keep on hand and provide to you. One of the borrowers must have at least one primary contact to be able to correspond with me by email. And the reason that I asked for that is because right now I am the only one completing the loan process for these Curated Colorado Stories, and it is imperative that I be able to stay on top of all of that. And the only way that I could think of doing that was through email for myself and my own sanity. I know that not everyone is tech savvy, and I realize that this is a limitation, and I am only one person right now. And if I would like to be able to, one, have it documented. So if something comes up, we can certainly document what happened in the process, but also this allows me to be able to stay on top of it, because I am much faster with email than say I am with faxing or with phone calls, which I have had to do with borrowers in the past. And finally, I do ask that borrowers to complete a security survey. In no way do the answers prohibit people from being able to borrow a Curated Colorado Story, but it does allow me to understand what the space is like and what the staff capacity is. Mostly it's just so that we are able to communicate and understand. I am able to understand what your space is. You're able to understand what you're responsible for while you have the objects in your custody. It is in no way prohibitive. And I am very flexible to work with borrowers to figure out what might be a great alternative if perhaps, like the lending resource has to come while it's not during the open season or comes during the off season. So I'm happy to work with people about that. One of the best ways that people can go ahead and start borrowing right now is by going to our Community Lending Resource tab on our public portal in Argus, which is different than Compass, if some of you are familiar with Compass. So we at the History Colorado Curatorial Services and Collections Access Department, we have our own portal through Argus, as well as the same database that we use that Compass is. So Argus allows us to have our collection online. And so you can find that at h-co.org/collections. And under that, you can go to the Community Lending Resource tab. And then on the left side, you can actually see the available Curated Colorado Stories that we have. And this slide was created back in June. We actually have a new story that we're adding, actually two new stories. So one is the Santa Fe Trail, the bicentennial of the Santa Fe Trail, in addition to the 10th Mountain Division. But we also have the 30th anniversary of the State Historical Fund. I've been working with my colleagues over at some of Todd's colleagues and colleagues with the State Historical Fund to create a community lending resource that incorporates that sort of Curated Colorado Story around the importance of SHF and preservation. I'm very excited to be able to work on it and have it ship out. It'll be in Julesburg, Colorado by the end of September and up, and we're very excited to have that sent out and to share those stories about how preservation and building vibrant communities can go hand in hand. So you are welcome to go ahead and go to that. And then in that sort of section about the community lending resource and under each story of those tabs on the left side, you can see that if interested, complete this form, and that will send you straight to the Google interest form link. And then that will immediately trigger me to understand that you're interested in borrowing stuff, because I get notifications through Gmail that I have a response. So when you begin borrowing by completing your interest form. Once the interest form is complete, that's just basic point of contact information, address, shipping information, that kind of thing. Any extra services that you'd like to add. Once that's done, then I complete the application form. The interest form takes about 15 minutes. The application form takes about maybe 30, 45 minutes. And so that one is a little bit more robust. And that is when I do ask for confirmation either through proof of insurance either through a certificate of insurance, or you give me your contact information for your insurer and I ask them for the certificate of insurance. And then finally, at the end, I go ahead and have them complete a closeout survey. You know, it's as easy as 5 minutes, can be as, you know, if you want to share all your thoughts, feelings, and details, you're welcome to do so, and that takes about 20 minutes. Again, none of these answers preclude borrowers from participation. Rather, it's an opportunity for me and my staff to know what your venue and capacity is like and allow you to feel like you are getting an authentic museum experience through that. This is something, this sort of like step-by-step deconstruction of the loan is identical to what museums that have a robust loaning program, either with outgoing or incoming loans. This is the same thing that they do. They just do it in a little bit different way with some little bit different forms, but it's essentially the same process. And so you and your team are getting experience yourselves and being able to borrow and do loans in a real museum sort of training, kind of real on-the-job training way. So each Curated Colorado Story includes what we are calling totes. And the totes actually, here, I have them over here. So give me a second while I pull them over. We have totes that come in these big totes right here. They measure about 20 by 15 by 10 is about the size of them. And they come, you know, we can ship them through FedEx. They're really great to be able to have. So they're something that we use. And then we ship the objects in those totes. We also provide all the supplies you need. So one tote will always have the supplies. And so I have one of the supply totes in front with me right now. When you open up the tote, no, actually, that supply tote is always a little heavy, so I'll open up this one. So when you open up the tote, you can actually see that there is an objects box inside that I have added. So if the plastic of the tote breaks, we can actually pull out the blue box inside and install it in a new tote. So it just sort of adds another level of sort of safety and protection for the objects as they're shipped through FedEx, because FedEx is not a fine art shipper. And my assumption is, even if I put fragile on the box, it won't be treated that way. So I sort of want to make sure that everything is treated robustly and safely. So in the supply tote, every Curated Colorado Story comes with a program, with a binder. This includes all of the installation instructions. So I can flip right to the table of contents, and you can find what you're looking for in that table of contents. This is my contact emergency information. When I first put these binders together, my boss pointed out that I didn't have an emergency contact page. And I was like, oh, right, yeah, you would probably need to know who to call in an emergency. So in any case, that's another reason why it's really important to be able to have other staff assisting and helping you as you work through your own sort of borrowing projects and things like this, because you forget sometimes super basic stuff. So in the registration information section of the binder, I have a section on object handling. And I have, you know, how to handle objects if you don't have any handling experience, what the expectations are for how to do that. Basically, don't pick up an object if you don't know where it's going to get set down. So make sure that you have the place where it's going to go first, ready to go before you actually pick up the object. And of course, we have the installation and the packing and repacking instructions. And so you can see on the slide actually that I have for the 10th Mountain Division Curated Colorado Story, I have shown how there are a pair of ski skins that are packed in the tote. And of course, the ski skins are like 6 feet long. And so I rolled them on foam and I put them in some stockinette and some foam and mounted them sort of curled. And a section of that curl actually can come out and be unrolled. And then you re-roll it for packing again. And then that way people can see exactly how to do that. And then also, I also included in this slide pictures of a reproduction print, as well as the interpretive label for the objects and the intro text for the labels, so for the Curated Colorado Story. I also, with the extended labels, want to make sure that no matter who comes to see the display, that any object can get you interested. So every object will include their own explanatory label. which is a little bit different than most exhibits. A lot of times an exhibit will include like 4 or 5 objects and have like maybe one label that talks specifically about an object. And in this case, I want to make sure that visitors to your, your little sites can, not little as in, I didn't mean it that way. I meant to your sites and perhaps little areas of the Curated Colorado Story. It's not very large. That's what I mean. That people can come look at an object and leave, and that they feel like if they want to read more, they can. And that way, it's always accessible no matter how you come to it. There's no story arc. You don't have to put it together in a certain way. You can mix and match wherever you want to go. So that way you have real flexibility in your space to be able to install where it's convenient for you rather than having a specific layout. The other thing is that the 3 program ideas, like I mentioned, the movie night recommendation, book list, trivia, etc. So in this section, we can actually go to the programming section in the binder. And you can see that in this 10th Mountain Division binder, we also include a DVD that History Colorado made back in the early 2000s about the 10th Mountain Division. And so you can play that as part of your movie night and come with some ideas about perhaps where else you can see other interviews or other 10th Mountain Division stories, like either through DPL, Denver Public Library, because they also have the 10th Mountain Division archives over there as well. And then there's also a 10th Mountain stuff on YouTube, some other YouTube items. Also in here, we have a music night, the World War II playlist and beyond. Perhaps you can do like your own music night. And Spotify has all kinds of lists. You can intersperse that with oral histories from DPL, Denver Public Library, or from History Colorado. And then finally in this one, we have a Share Your Story night where we bring in community voices or community experts to be able to share about their own ways and own photographs and their own family stories in which they can connect either to 10th Mountain Division, either to World War II or veterans in general, that we really want to bring out the community voices and the community experts in those areas that yes, History Colorado can provide. We can provide a speaker for you, a history, like our curator of military history, he could come, or he could give a digital virtual speaking program to you. We offer $50, I think it's $25 for half an hour, $50 for an hour. So, or we can install it, anything like that. But I do want to be able to have communities to be able to engage with their own communities and voices as well. And then also, of course, I include Oprah's 100 list, or let's see, what is it called? It's Oprah's list of best book club questions. So she breaks it down by genre about the different questions that, of course, you can ask at a book club. So I thought that was very helpful. Thank you, Oprah, and your team. In this particular case, we were actually able to successfully send the 10th Mountain Division Curated Colorado Stories to the Lake County Public Library. And this is an example to show how they were able to install the Curated Colorado Story at their site, which is really fantastic. It was really delightful to work with Holly, if any of you know her, at Lake County Public Library. She was so generous in being my guinea pig in Leadville. I emailed her and just sort of straight cold emailed her and was like, hey, I have this idea, I need help. Would you be willing to be my guinea pig as I worked out all the kinks and the details? So she was really gracious in spending time with me during the process to be able to make sure that at every stage she had what she needed and I was able to tweak what we needed, and we were able to really work well together. You'll notice that a lot of the labels and the reproduced photos are quite large. They're only 11 by 14, however, so they can fit inside the tote. And those were printed by our fantastic staff with our design and production department. They just used some extra supplies that they had to print all of the labels and mount them on Coroplast, this really robust plastic material. And that way they, the labels can kind of take some abuse during shipment as they're shipped through FedEx. So again, having that time, originally this project sort of, as I was saying, came together in my head around fall 2019. This display ended up coming on display, like Holly had it on display by February 2021. So you can see that this project did take quite a lot of time. Again, it was just me being able to sort of work out what would be a good idea, but I did rely heavily on our curator of military history to come up with the content, to select the objects that would be really excellent for shipping back and forth, that they would be okay to handle handle some of the vibrations. Obviously, we can't send super fragile items or items that would be at threat for huge fluctuation changes in temperature and humidity. So I really relied on a lot of my team members to be able to assist me in this, because I'm not an expert in 10th Mountain Division or military history of Colorado. So it was really vital that I be able to work not only on a timeline that was feasible for me, but a timeline that was feasible for my colleagues. And so I knew that the graphic, one of the designers who specializes in art graphics, she was printing a bunch of labels for a different exhibit. And so I asked her right when she was printing all those labels, if she could please print these, because I knew that the vinyl paper, it's better to print all the labels at once than individual labels because of the printer, it's so large format. So I knew I needed to time my ask like to an exhibit to sort of just like be able to tack all of that on. So, which is really wonderful that Celia was able to accommodate that. So as I move forward, as more curated Colorado stories come forward, I have, of course, been trying to make sure that I ask in enough time that gives them enough lead time to be able to sneak this in, as it were, into their schedule. So people have been really generous in that respect. One of the things that I really felt strongly about when I first was developing this was to have an idea of what is success. So yes, I wanted to have the successful completion of a loan. Yes, I wanted to be able to reach out to all of these rural partners, but I also wanted to be able to sort of set metrics for myself and milestones for myself to understand how I was doing. And that way I could report to my supervisor whether or not this actually was going to work. So one of the things that we tried initially was the same idea as the woman in New Mexico. And I am so embarrassed that I do not remember her name. I need to go, Todd, next time I give this book talk, I need to go find her name before I present again, because it's really important that I credit the inspiration from where they come from. But anyway, I wanted to be able to point to, not just, for me, it's not necessarily about the visitors who go and see these curated Colorado stories, because those numbers, we can't really count those numbers because they're your site, they're your visitation numbers. But I did want to be able to consider what is success for this project and how do we know when we've been successful. So for the first year, one of the things that I wanted to do was send and return one of the curated Colorado stories through CLIC, which is the Colorado Library Consortium, using the Argus portal and the Google Forms. So I worked with my team to develop the tab on Argus. So my supervisor worked with a contractor to be able to put all of that onto the public portal. We had to engineer, and by engineer, I mean Argus is really great in that everything's customizable and they provide you a lot of the tools to make everything public and tweak a little bit. So it wasn't like we had to go to Argus and say, hey, we need you to make a whole new module. We already had the ability to make a community lending resource module, but I still needed that help to be able to do that, because that's not something that I am trained in. Not that I couldn't learn, but there's someone already trained and I would love to be able to use them. So the Colorado Library Consortium, actually, if you're familiar at all with prospector loans, that's what prospector loans use. They use the Colorado Library Consortium to be able to ship objects back, well, books, I should say, books, audio materials, audiobooks, that kind of thing, back and forth between library sites. And we actually have the research center here at History Colorado Center in Denver is a registered member, a paying subscription member to the, or was at the time, to the Colorado Library Consortium. And I wanted to see if I could, because we're already paying for the subscription. We already, receive items, mostly microfilm, back and forth between the courier. And I wanted to successfully see if we could do it. This was an unusual ask. It doesn't traditionally, traditionally those same size totes than the yellow totes Click uses gray totes, same size. They send books back and forth and other materials. So this would be a new sort of experience and figuring out. So I worked with some Click folks, but unfortunately, the courier system did not work the way that I had hoped. We unfortunately were unable to get a consistent couriering schedule. There has been some logistical issues with the partner that Click uses to ship items back and forth between libraries. And in fact, like the object sat, so thank goodness for Holly and her patience at Lake County Public Library, but the object sat in our security office for like 6 weeks before the courier came to pick them up, even though I had emailed Click, and they're fantastic. They were really generous and nice and sort of working with it, but they contract out the courier process of this. So, I emailed them and said, these items are ready for pickup, but the actual courier didn't come for 6 weeks. And then at the end, Holly, who's at a public library, so they have regular courier pickups, they picked up my totes, but they didn't arrive until 8 weeks later. So I didn't actually get my objects back until like April or May, which is not great if you want to have items be sent back and forth between places and to be able to get them on time during their open season. If they only have 3 months while they're open and it takes that long literally to ship something back and forth, like it's really not a success. And so I really learned a lot. That is what my family likes to call them, learning experiences when things don't go your way. That Click was not the way we wanted to go. I had really high hopes because, a lot of these communities have local libraries. The idea was that I'd ship them the totes to the libraries, whether or not the library was the person that was the final borrower. You could go pick it up at your library, go to your site, set up the totes, do the Curated Colorado Stories, send it back to the library. It was like a whole thing. I had this dream of how this would go, and it did not go at all. So even though it was I wouldn't call it a failure, because I did get it sent and returned to Click, but it was not done the way that I had hoped. And so in my mind, that is success, because I was able to figure out what would work. And for us, that was the FedEx prepaid labels. So for the next 3 years, so between 2021 and 2023, I want 3 different curated Colorado stories. So we already have 10th Mountain Division, and we already have Santa Fe Trail that's successfully been sent out. And then we're working on a 3rd that's going to come out, the 30th anniversary of the State Historical Fund. And then I've got a couple more in the works with some other colleagues. But basically, I would like 3 different curated Colorado stories sent to 6 different sites over the next 3 years. So that's 6 different loans. And one of the reasons that I want to do repeats of the same story, so the 10th Mountain Division gets sent again, and the Santa Fe Trail gets sent again, is because I want my own use in Argus to be worked out. That the way that the loan module currently works on my end, I don't know if it will work for the same number. This is going to get a little technical, so I apologize, but a little jargony. So I'm trying to figure out a way to not say this, but basically on my end, each curated Colorado story gets its own activity number. It is unclear to me whether or not I can have multiple parties under the same activity number and just refresh the begin and end dates for each loan. So I kind of want to experiment that on my end. I also would like to be able to see borrowers successfully use Argus, that they navigate to the community lending resource page, that they successfully are able to use Google Forms, that the FedEx pickup that I schedule at sites will actually happen. So for the Santa Fe Trail Bicentennial curated story, that one actually was just sent out. I am now waiting for when the loan period will end, which will be sometime in October. That one will actually be our first time using the prepaid return labels. So I am really trying to figure out what would that look like, and really problem solve that and prototype that. So it's still in progress. I'll keep you updated, but it does look like we'll have more than 3 curated Colorado stories created in the next 3 years. But it will be interesting to see if we can actually get 6 different sites, these different same loans to different places. So that would be a goal for me. And finally, in the next 5 years, so between 2023 and 2027, I would like to transition this entire project to intern fulfillment. And what I mean by that is that I, as the Exhibits and Loan Registrar, would oversee this process and oversee sort of the big idea creation, but that it would be interns who actually use this as an intern project to be able to track successfully all curated Colorado stories. So they're the ones who would work with borrowers to start with correspondence. They're the ones who would check and do condition reports on all the objects, make sure that the totes are still in really great condition, make sure that all the paperwork is being done and monitored. And part of the reason I want to provide this is because I want to be able to give interns real on-the-job training with loans, condition reports, managing projects and correspondence with lots of different types of people. I think that in school, you learn a lot of theory, but you don't necessarily learn the practical side of what that looks like. And so, perhaps, they learn how to mount things. So in one of the totes that I have here, I have an object tray here of objects that are ready to be mounted. So this is a 10th Mountain Division patch right here. It's been backed and wrapped backed with mat board and wrapped in Mylar and then mounted to I should undo the bow, mounted to a little Plex L mount. This is like just a little Plex mount that someone in my design and production department had ready to go. And so I would love to be able to teach interns how to make something like this, that perhaps I do the actual packing of the tray that comes inside the box, but they would be the ones doing the actual like mounting and cutting of the Mylar. The other thing that I would like to do in the next 5 years is to train other CSCA, so Curatorial Services and Collections Access Work Unit. That's the work unit I'm a part of. So CSCA and other HC staff in the program, so that, maybe the time comes and I win $1 zillion in the lottery and it's time for me to transition to doing something else. I would like to be able to have this program continue. So for me, success is to be able to have it so that it doesn't rely solely on me for its success, that people can continue to borrow curated stories without necessarily needing me. As much as I've loved working on this project and have really enjoyed working with all sorts of different types of people, true success means that it no longer is dependent upon me. And then finally, I would love to be able to create an instruction manual to maintain the program longevity and success. So not only training people, but also creating an instruction manual about every step in the process. So I do have sort of a basic step-by-step guide for content creators to be able to make something and what each person's job is, like what am I responsible for as the Exhibits and Loan Registrar? What are they responsible for as the content curator? But really the whole process, like where to order totes, where to order the blue board, how to make sure that you have the objects ready and in time, how, if you need to buy props, what is that process? All of those sort of little details that you wouldn't necessarily think of when you're first creating this project in terms of longevity. So like I said, we do have some more curated Colorado stories coming. So the Santa Fe Trail Bicentennial is done. It's out in the world. I have another one, Mining in Silverton, is on the way. That one's going to be coming sometime later this fall, early winter, maybe even January a little bit. Colorado Women's History with the Byers-Evans House. The AmeriCorps volunteer that is working there with Jillian at our community museum at the Center for Colorado Women's History is currently working on a curated Colorado story, and that will be out sometime in spring 2022. Again, the 30th anniversary of the State Historical Fund, that one's actually being developed right now. I actually have some stuff out right now to get the labels printed and get the images ready to go. So that will be sent out at the end of September this month. And then finally, I also am working with Holly Norton, who you might know, the state archaeologist. Working on a project with her to do the historical archaeology at the Ferris Hotel, which is the site under the Pueblo Museum. So I'm excited to be able to work with her. And then finally, she also suggested that we work on some archaeology in Mesa Verde. That one's still a little bit in works. We're sort of toying with the idea. We haven't quite figured out what that one will look like, so that is an option. Some other things we're working on as well. This was created back in June, but some other ideas are Postcards in Colorado is another one. Art in Colorado. Another colleague of mine would like to do coal mining and unions in Colorado. So we really have a lot coming down the pike, which is very, very exciting, which also means that I have a ton of work ahead of me, but we're going to let that be a future problem for future Kimberly. So if you have any questions, if you have any ideas, if you are interested yourself, please don't hesitate to contact me. That is my email. And then if you just want to go ahead and use the code CONFAB that I'm putting in chat right now, when you do your ordering for your own community lending resource for your Curated Colorado Story, that you will be able to receive a discount on that fee. Just 50%, so it'll only be it'll still have like a little bit of a nominal fee, but it'll be 50% off of your fee as a thank you for accommodating my delayed and late response. I will also mention that generously that the State Historical Fund has offered to pay for the entire borrower's fee when you borrow the 30th anniversary of the State Historical Fund. So they cover that entire borrower's fee for you. That is something that SHF has offered for all of them, to all of the borrowers to be able to participate in. So we are really excited to be able to offer that to anyone who borrows just the SHF 30th anniversary lending resource, because that was something that is the SHF fund, the State Historical Fund has decided that this is a project that they would like to help fund, which is really fantastic that worked out. So with that, I am done. I realize this has been, thank you for listening. I have talked a very long time. So if you have questions and concerns, or you want to know more, like we've got some time for some Q&A. So I would love to be able to hear what you have, what questions you might have. So Todd, thank you so much for letting me participate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kimberly. I really appreciate your presentation, and it was really great. I wish we remembered the woman in New Mexico.
I know.
I'm sure we'll remember it after this. Yeah, and I really appreciated you sharing how you put this all together and really kind of how you learned from trial and error about this. And I'm sure that there are folks here that are listening to this who maybe could share their ideas or their experiences as well. And I'm also really hopeful that this is kind of a good model of putting together a really small traveling exhibit. And I think it could be something that, that maybe our repositories could use as a model for their collections that they are holding in trust, being able to send them out to other institutions around Colorado. So I really appreciate this extremely well, and I'm so glad that you were able to present. So I am going to, let's see here, stop the.
Do you need me to stop sharing? I'll stop sharing. Yeah. There we go.
Maybe we can see everyone, and I'm sure there may be some questions. So if you have a question, please unmute yourself. And if you could just introduce yourself too, tell us what institution you're with, and please ask some questions for Kimberly. Anyone have any questions? And by the way, this will be recorded, so we'll put it up on our program YouTube site. So you may get some delayed questions later too, Kimberly.
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely. I'm happy to answer any questions people might have. Yes. And I like your idea of having this be a model for our repositories. I think once I work out the historical archaeology work that Holly Norton has been doing with the Ferris Hotel, I had no idea that she was doing that work, and that's work that our repositories are doing, until she did a presentation at our all staff. And I messaged her after her all staff presentation and was like, oh my gosh, you need to do this more often. You need to tell us more often what people and state repositories are doing, because this is such interesting work. My background is project management and registration. So that's like paperwork and legal documents, you know, like my background is not archaeology. So it is so exciting for me to be able to possibly work with any of you on this confab to perhaps work through or think through ideas that you might have to be able to provide your own sort of traveling mini exhibits throughout the state. Yeah.
Great. And Kimberly, just to clarify, as far as like the insurance is concerned, what kind of insurance do each of your organizations have to show to have?
Great question. Yeah, so you don't need fine art insurance. You actually just need standard occupancy insurance. So most places will have to have insurance if they are a business of any kind, whether profit or nonprofit, and whether you're covered by the county or the state, doesn't matter. So I just literally need to know who to contact in case of like, should something happen in the middle of shipment or should something happen on site, God forbid, you know, flood, fire, tornado, you know, you never know in Colorado, earthquake, that you are protected as well. That the one element of that insurance is I just need a contact person and with the proof of insurance and you haven't lapsed. So I don't even need to be listed as an also insured. There's no cap or minimum amount, I should say, no threshold amount that you need to have for coverage. So the good news is it's literally like, do you have insurance? And can I have proof, please?
Looks like we've got a question from Karen. Karen, you want to introduce yourself too? And I can, if you want to ask the question or if you want me to, I can.
I don't really have a question. I'm Karen. I'm with 17 Mile House in Arapahoe County. This is so exciting to me that there is this possibility that to borrow programs that have already been curated and put together, because we're a very small group, not open all the time, and to be able to do that at not a huge cost is amazing. So I'm really looking forward to checking into it.
Thank you so much for saying that. That really makes me feel good, Karen, that this is actually something appealing to you, that I didn't create a project no one wants. That'd be the worst. That's like, what's success? No one wants this. Cool. All right. Well, there goes 2 years of work down the drain. But that means a lot to me to hear you say that, mostly because it means that it's worth the time and the effort to work with so many people across History Colorado to make this happen. So if you have ideas too, Karen, if after looking into it, if you have an idea of what you'd like to see, you know, the Santa Fe Trail Bicentennial exhibit, you know, curated story happened because we received a request from the visitor center. So yeah, just know that we would love to be able to work with you if you have any ideas, or in general, to any of you, if you need anything at all, you're welcome to reach out to Todd or I and we can connect you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Be nice to do one on the Smoky Hill Trail, maybe, perhaps. All right.
I wanted to mention to you real fast, I sent out a survey to a bunch of different sites about what possible topics they would want to see. And I can actually share that with you. Let me open up the right, just so that people can see that, like, the reason I'm sharing this is because I want to show that, you know, maybe you don't know what you want to, maybe you're interested in doing something like this, you know, maybe you are a repository that's interested in doing something like this, but maybe you don't know where to start. And what you can do is I basically just, like, there's a list through the Colorado Wyoming Association of Museums. They have a list of every single current museum in Colorado and Wyoming. And so I took the list for Colorado and I've sent out this Google survey to like 350 sites. I received about 40 responses, so a little over 10%, which really made me jazzed because I was not anticipating, you know, like really any response is fantastic. So let me just quick share that with you, that I want to share that. So, so this was the results. So here were the responses that we have. Here, let me open up this so that it's nice and big so people can read it. There we Basically, I just wanted to walk through and ask them, these are the things we have. What would you be interested in borrowing? And interestingly, I had historical archaeology at the Paris Hotel was maybe not as popular. But down here, I offered as one of the options, a possible topic is the State Historic Preservation Office and the protection of archaeological resources in Colorado. That's something that Todd and I had mentioned. And if you'll notice, it is most people's first choice.
Wow.
So I did want to share with you, Todd, that people are interested in archaeological resources and preservation, which I thought was interesting that they're not interested in the historical archaeology of the Paris Hotel, but they are interested in archaeology and historic preservation. So, so we'll see how we work that out. But I thought that that would be something interesting. Yeah. So I wanted to go ahead and share that with you.
Great. Yeah, we'll be talking probably a lot more about traveling exhibits and how to highlight things in your own collections that are related to archaeology. You know, a little bit more at the Confab, at the curation forum, and then probably in subsequent confabs as well. So keep that in mind. And again, I want to thank Kimberly so much for giving a great presentation and really sharing so much of how you put this all together. It's fantastic. And hopefully we will get more folks involved in it. So if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to Kimberly or myself, and we'll get you started with these great small mini traveling exhibits. So it's a couple minutes before 2. So again, thank you all. And I look forward to seeing some of you at the forum. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.